was perhaps in 1936. So it was truly wonderful to have them sitting throughout this meeting. Of course, the great pity was that it's all virtual. We felt their presence, we felt their experience, and in many ways, as members of the NEC, we knew we could draw from their wisdom. And I guess even as members of the NEC spoke, they knew that looking on, listening in, were the two leaders, past leaders of our movement. So I'd like to thank them and extend my very warm gratitude to them for having joined in. Comrades, we've had a wonderful last NEC session for the year. This has been a very productive NEC meeting that in many ways has enabled us to reflect on our work this year and also to identify some of our key priorities as we go into 2021. And it was important for us to reflect on what we set out to do in our 2020 January statement, because it gave us a guide on how we should examine the road that we have traveled. We've had to discuss some difficult issues that had the potential to deepen division and exacerbate tensions in our movement. And I wish to commend all members of the National Executive Committee for the comradely manner in which these discussions at this NEC have taken place. And each NEC meeting I have found as president that we continue to rise to the occasion, even as we deal with very difficult issues. Comrades were very frank and direct and have sought to persuade each other through the strength of their arguments. And this is an important mantra of the ANC, that we persuade one another, we try and get each other to see other viewpoints. And I think that's what happened at this meeting as well. This is the lessons that we have drawn from those who have come before us. And the discussions have been underpinned by the desire to find a solution to the challenges that we confront. Once again, we've proven many commentators and other public voices wrong. We have not torn ourselves apart and descended into bitter recrimination, and I guess others possibly expected that there would be walkouts and punch-ups. Sorry to disappoint them. It did not happen, and it will not happen, because we continue to seek to forge unity and to find one another. We have not sharpened divisions as people feared we would at this NEC meeting. If one read the headlines of various newspapers, it seemed to many people that tensions would be high, but it didn't happen. In fact, through our discussions, in many ways, we have narrowed down our differences, the differences that exist. We need to be alive to the reality that there are some outside our movement who are keen to influence our discussions as well as our decisions. And we would say they should desist from doing so. Some, of course, do so out of genuine concern for the organization and for the direction that the country is taking or will take. Some do so out of narrow self-interest. We must also acknowledge that there are some amongst us who perhaps wittingly or unwittingly, contributes to a public discourse that is damaging to the unity and the cohesion of the NEC and our movement as a whole. As we have said before, we need to desist as leaders of this great movement, the African National Congress, from public statements that are at variance with the decisions of the structure of the ANC and which are likely to fuel divisions amongst us. This NEC agreed that we have huge tasks that lie ahead of us. They had agreed that the task at this time is to rebuild our economy following the devastation caused by COVID-19. South Africa's economy has been devastated by this pandemic, but today we receive good news that our economy is rebounding and has rebounded more strongly than it was expected in Q3, with output rising to about 66.1% on a quarter-to-quarter basis. And also on an annualized basis, it also adjusted quite wonderfully. And in a way, this was more than our expectations and also consensus expectations of the market. We have, as an NEC, noted the progress that is being made in the implementation of the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, particularly with respect to the various aspects of that plan, where work is now seriously underway. The presidential employment stimulus, the infrastructure investment, and the measures that we are going to be taking to improve energy generation capacity. We reaffirmed as the NEC this plan and embraced it and realized that the various areas and priorities that have been set will lead to the revamp of our economy and will, in the end, also have the great potential of restructuring our economy in a way that it will empower and also give opportunities to those who've for years been left outside, playing a role in the economy of their country. So what are we going to do? We're going to be focusing on water projects, roads, bridges, human settlements, health and education, digital infrastructure, public transport, and achieving significant job creation through the various multipliers, and with great emphasis on the restructuring aspect of our economy, which has to do with localization, strengthening the small medium enterprise sector, and making sure that we also include the women of our country, the youth, and people with disabilities in economic activity. Now, the NEC welcomed progress in regard to this, but it also noted the with concern, the deteriorating fiscal situation in the country, with debt payments absorbing a growing share of limited public resources, and increasingly crowding out spending on social and economic investment. And this was prominent in the discussions that the NEC had. But the NEC also said that we are committed to responsible fiscal management. We have emphasized the importance of the economic empowerment of women and will be giving attention to the various interventions that need to be made to give effect to this. The NEC also spent quite a bit of time discussing COVID-19 and its effect not only on the economy but on our people as a whole. The NEC expressed grave concern about the increase in infections and more particularly in the deaths over the last few weeks, in particular in the hotspots in the Eastern Cape, as well as what is emerging as hotspots area in the Western Cape on the Garden Route districts, and also the Sarah Baartman area. But we also welcome the measures that have been put in place, that the Department of Health and the health of workers are putting in place to contain these outbreaks. We appreciate the work that's also being done by ANC branches, as well as public representatives, also by community-based organizations and civil society, who continue to raise the level of awareness, a level of consciousness amongst our people, and who also continue to mobilize community solidarity during this difficult situation that we face of the pandemic. We're grateful for all the work that is being done at that local level. We recognize that what we do as a society over the next month will also be crucial to the efforts to prevent the second wave of infections that we've been talking about. And in this regard, the NEC is calling on all South Africans to change our behavior now to prevent this resurgence that we are seeing on the horizon. If we act, we could prevent this resurgence. We are therefore calling on the structures of the ANC to use all available platforms, but we even go beyond our own structures and say community-based organizations, various formations, religious bodies, trade unions, and sporting organizations, traditional leaders, and all organizations that are connected to our people, including entities such as local radio stations and local media, to appeal to each community to adhere to COVID-19 regulations during the festive season. We've been stressing that the most dangerous period that we now face is the festive season. It is almost like we're walking through a valley of great infections and a valley that could also be accompanied by death. So we call on our people to avoid manifestations such as parties and large crowds, to restrict family gatherings, to wear a mask at all times, wash and keep social distance, and to protect the elderly from possible exposure. And just to be sure, we are not the only ones in the world who are beaming this type of message. The same message is being propagated in various parts of the world and in other countries. This NEC acknowledged the important point about the need for the African continent as a matter of priority to also build its capacity to deal with COVID-19, but also to begin to look at the future, where through research, innovation, and also local manufacturing, we're able, as a continent, to manufacture our own diagnostic, therapeutic, and also vaccines, so that we should no longer continue to be dependent on other countries with regards to essential medicines, medical equipment, or a vaccine. We recalled as an NEC that the ANC has taken a decision that we should have a state-owned pharmaceutical company that would be able to enable this type of interventions to take place and be able to work with our sister countries on the continent. In the course of its response to the pandemic, Africa has demonstrated that if we dedicate sufficient effort and resources, we have the means to meet the challenge. The NEC has taken a firm stance on another pandemic that we have been talking about, which is gender-based violence in our society. In great support of the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, which brings together all sections of society, the NEC is urging that our movement, the ANC, and our alliance partners should continue to mobilize within communities to fight this scourge, to end all forms of patriarchy, and to address the factors that fuel the violence perpetrated by men against women. We urge our structures to take this up as the most important campaign. We welcome the specific focus on the role of men and boys in combating gender-based violence and in fighting against the patriarchal attitudes and practices that create an environment in which gender-based violence and femicide flourish. We must welcome the dialogues and the engagements with and among men and boys on these issues, and we want to see more and more of these dialogues taking place. As the ANC, we must have a zero-tolerance approach to violence and intimidation against women within our own organization. The acts of violence and the threats of violence that have been made against several women within our organization is deeply distressing, and it must stop. It is a sign both of the persistence of patriarchy in the movement and that of general levels of intolerance within the organization. We must act decisively also to rid our organization of both these tendencies. Now, as part of our program for 2021, we should develop and implement workshops at every level of the organization, from the NEC down to branch committee levels, and in each of the leagues on issues such as patriarchy, gender equality, and gender sensitivity. Further than that, we must take firm disciplinary action against anyone in our ranks found to be perpetrating such despicable behavior. This meeting has had an extensive discussion on the implementation of the resolutions of our conference and the decisions of the NEC on the issue of corruption and other forms of wrongdoing. As the NEC, we have reaffirmed several important principles. We confirm the firm stance we have taken on corruption and wrongdoing within our ranks and within society. There will be no dilution of the position that we have taken in this regard. We will fully implement the mandate of the 54th National Conference and the decisions made by the NEC, understanding that these are fundamental to the renewal of our organization and to the restoration of the credibility of the movement among South Africans. This is a clear mandate that we were given by the conference. Reaffirm the position taken at our meeting of the 31st July to the 2nd of July, that the NEC, the ANC rather, needs to draw a line, a very clear line in the sand, between the organization and those who steal and those who commit other crimes against our people. We also reaffirm the decisions on the steps towards the implementation of conference resolution as agreed at our meeting of the 28th to the 30th of August and communicated by the officials through the NEC statement after that meeting. The NEC stressed that there can be no retreat from this position. We will be consistent, and we will also be even-handed in the application of these decisions, and will ensure that fair and due processes are followed. We have agreed that in order to give effect to these decisions, the officials will finalize the guidelines that will be applied in instances where members of the organization are formally charged with, convicted of, or reported to be involved in corruption or other serious crimes. The NEC has taken note of the legal opinions that were solicited by the officials. Now, while technical legal opinions are important as background information, as a voluntary organization, the ANC is duty-bound to follow its constitution, its rules, conference resolutions, and NEC decisions, as well as, of course, it should operate within the parameters of the Constitution and the laws of the Republic. It is in this context that our meeting welcomed our Secretary General's decision to present himself to the Integrity Commission on the 12th of December 2020. Now, the officials will process the outcomes of that engagement and the determination by the Integrity Commission and report to the NWC as well as the NEC within the broad context of the guidelines that need to be put together. And in arriving at those guidelines, the NEC has noted that we do need to have thoroughgoing discussions with our provinces, the secretaries of our provinces, and the leagues, because they too are experiencing precisely the same challenge. We therefore need to integrate the experiences of all the structures of our movement in arriving at a cogent and a thoroughly workable position in this. We are confident that we will be able to traverse our way around this issue and still be able to implement the resolution of our conference. The NEC has been correct, having taken note about some incidents that keep happening in our movement, has been correct in its condemnation in the strongest terms of the actions by some of our members and leaders who have been seen burning ANC regalia outside the court where the SG appeared in Mangaung, as well as inflammatory and divisive statements. The NEC has called on all leaders and members to exercise maximum discipline and to refrain from actions such as burning ANC regalia, because it is unbecoming for us as members to denigrate and desecrate regalia, including sometimes the flag of our organization, in the way that some members are now seen to be doing. It is not acceptable, and it must stop. whatever form of unhappiness any one of us has, we say, do not attack this glorious movement. Deal with issues within the organization, have the matters discussed, express your unhappiness. And this is the beauty that we had in the NEC today, that even those who may not have felt exactly the same way, because we never do, we were able to discuss matters within the confines of the NEC and sought to find a way of finding each other. So it is not comradely and it is not becoming of any of us to be denigrating this great organization of John Langalibale Dube, Nelson Mandela, Albert Luthuli, and many other leaders, Mama Sisulu and others. So we ask our members to desist from participating in acts that are going to denigrate our organization. We must rather focus our attention on renewal and unity. The NEC agreed that we must confirm our appreciation of the work of the Zondo Commission under very difficult circumstances. We affirm our call to all members of our movement to cooperate with the Commission and to refrain from unnecessary attacks on the Deputy Chief Justice and the work that he has been asked to do by the South African nation. On our own organizational renewal and rebuilding task, after the disruption that has been caused by the coronavirus pandemic, this NEC has taken several important decisions on organizational processes that need to take place over the next few months. We should applaud the progress that has been made in the implementation of a modernized online membership system, while there are over 1.4 million members of the African National Congress on the system. And this is historic and this is a record. There are, however, still a number of members who still need to renew their membership by the cutoff date that we have set. We initially set a cutoff date of 15th December. I think there will be discussions on seeing whether that should be extended so that many more members can get to renew their membership before we get into a whole number of other activities in the new year. We must put out a call to all members to register on the system, to check their status, and to renew their membership by the cutoff date. It's a fairly simple process where each member is now in full control of their membership status. We have agreed that all branches, regions, and provinces where conferences are already due or whose mandates come to an end in 2021 must be allowed to have their provincial and regional conferences before the 31st of May, 2021 in compliance with the Constitution.
No, that thing of
provinces and regions whose term expires after May 2021 should have their term extended until after the local government elections. We will also make preparations for the national congresses or conferences of the ANC Youth League, which have agreed should be held before the end of March in 2021. In organizing these conferences, we will adhere to the restrictions on gatherings and the health protocols that are in place to prevent transmission of the coronavirus. In doing so, we must ensure that no one is excluded from the process. The ANC has also reflected on the engagements of the Alliance Secretariat and the Alliance Political Council. We agreed that there are several issues on which we need to continue engagement, including a common approach to COVID-19 pandemic, the crisis facing our SOEs, the declaration of certain public holidays as non-trading holidays, energy security, the formation of an alliance economics task team, and the local government candidate selection process. And just over a week's time, the country will be celebrating Reconciliation Day. Among the important issues that we need to raise in this context is the outstanding matters of investigations, prosecutions, and reparations from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We need to give these urgent attention in pursuance of transitional justice and to give closure to, and justice rather, to families of victims of apartheid era crimes. In conclusion, comrades, this has been an extremely difficult year for our country and for the people of this great nation. As we prepare for a new year, there are many challenges that lie ahead. Notwithstanding the challenges, we are encouraged by some of the green shoots that we are seeing, rebound economy. Already we can see quite a bit of economic activity that should give us hope. We are determined to overcome the coronavirus pandemic, to rebuild our economy, to create jobs, and to improve the conditions of poor people in our country and those who are vulnerable. We are determined as this leadership of the ANC to harness our every energy, our every capability, and our every resource to respond to these challenges. And some of our responses will no doubt also be tackled and announced when we release the January 8th statement in January of 2021. We are determined to overcome, yes, these challenges. We can only do so if we are united, but also more importantly, if we as a movement continue to enjoy the confidence of the people of South Africa. As we conclude, we can say with confidence that this meeting of the National Executive Committee has established a firm foundation for us to do the work that we must do. We should always remember that unity of the African National Congress is paramount. Unity is essential if we are to be effective in leading the radical transformation of our society and our economy. Our people have stored a great deal of trust and confidence in the ANC. And we recently saw this with the excellent results that the ANC achieved in the by-elections that we had recently. It demonstrates the continued confidence that our people have. We should therefore, as a movement, continue to be united, and it should be a unity that is underpinned by principles and values of our movement. And we must unite around our historic mission and around the society that we are committed to build. I thank you.
Thank you very much, comrades. All right, that's President Cyril Ramaphosa in his capacity as president of the ANC, giving closed remarks, delivering the closing address, rather, of the ANC NEC meeting that took place over the last couple of days. We'll certainly be having more of a discussion on what he had said today later on.